Uh, Obviously, our chairman as well as the members of our committee have used their imagination, Mr. President, because they want to establish a mechanism on the declaration of imminent
Danger.
disaster.
Disaster.
And if you read the bill, this involves the concept as well as the talent and ability to anticipate. Mahirap po gawin yun, Mr. President. And at least we have a law now which will now encourage Filipinos to plan ahead and anticipate. Pero Mr. President, ang tanong ko lang kasi, di ba meron na tayong parang authority, may existing law na authorized na ang mga LGUs as well as the disaster risk management councils and bodies to already prepare for pre-disaster to undertake pre-disaster preparations as well as expenses, if I am not mistaken, Mr. President.
Yes, the distinguished minority floor leader is correct, pointing out that RA 10121 already mandates pre-disaster preparedness program, and in fact, under the guidelines for the utilization of the LDR RMF, activities such as conduct of trainings and simulation exercises, development of standard operations manual for disaster operation centers, and stockpiling of basic emergency supplies, among others, are allowable expenses.
So paano po na parang naiiba itong ating panukala sa existing law? May malaking kakulangan ba ang existing law?
Mr. President, unfortunately, there is no clear provision, guidelines, or explicit authority under our existing laws or regulations which allow LGUs to act and utilize resources on a specific impending threat, particularly within 2 to 3 days before the onset of a disaster. And this is what we aim to address with our proposed bill, Mr. President.
So ang limitation po nung RA 10121, although it allows pre-disaster preparations, is what in the time period, that is in RA 10121. Number 5 sa paragraph is may declare a state of imminent disaster.
The anticipatory action, Mr. President, is disaster specific, Mr. President, and it is found already in the bill, Mr. President. And we seek to address the lack of legal basis for the government, the NGAs, and the LGUs to tap funds 3 to 5 days before a disaster strikes, Mr. President. And this is totally different from the regular preparedness and response programs under our existing laws, Mr. President. And if I may add, Mr. President, the anticipatory action is time-bound, hazard-specific, and interventions are based on the scientific forecast and projections of the said hazard vis-a-vis the exposure of the LGU, while preparedness and response under RA 10121 are programmed. Long-term solutions such as trainings, infrastructure, and the procurement of assets, Mr. President.
Hindi po ba may sa RA 10121 ando na yung concept ng pre-disaster preparedness? And that should be also hazard specific, hindi po ba?
You are correct, Mr. President. It is already there in Republic Act 10121, but the anticipatory action,
The piece of imminence?
is very specific in the disaster that is being forecasted, Mr. President.
Anong section dito? Can we saan ito sa can we just ask our sponsor to look at RA 10121 subparagraph BB of section 3, Mr. President. Kasi yun yung this is the definition of preparedness at nandun na rin yung being alert to hazards and taking appropriate action in the face of an imminent threat or an actual disaster. So, tama po ba na in that particular sense, nag-overlap tayo dun sa, itong ating bill, nag-overlap dun sa existing law?
My staff still
Yes, parang
getting
parang ang utos na nung 10121, be prepared. Tapos kasama na ng preparedness is pati yung, I think hindi lang ginamit yung anticipate ata na word dito very clear.
Hindi pa ginagamit yung anticipatory action of
Correct,
face.
na concept
Yes.
o word, but
Yes.
being prepared to face imminent threat na wala pa dyan, I think that is already the concept of anticipation, Mr. President. Sinabi naman niya yun. Ba't wala ba? Bawal ba yan?
All right, Mr. President, the difference between what is stated in Republic Act 10121 with regard to section 3, double B, with
Yeah.
regard to preparedness. Okay, the difference between preparedness and anticipatory action is that anticipatory action happens between preparedness and response in the window of opportunity between an early warning trigger for action and the onset of the disaster. And anticipatory action builds on preparedness efforts but remains distinct from them, as anticipatory action are undertaking for a specific and imminent threat. Technically, AA, or the anticipatory action, is a part of disaster preparedness, Mr. President, just a number of hours before the onset of a disaster, Mr. President.
So mas malapit sa hazard or disaster si anticipatory action.
Yes, you are correct, Mr.
So-
President.
Okay. And we are going to create another source of for funding the anticipatory action.
No, Mr. President.
Ay, hindi na po.
Hindi na.
Kukunin lang ito dun sa Disaster Preparedness Fund. Yan.
We are proposing to open the 70% of the disaster fund. Ito po yung portion ng disaster fund outside the QRF or yung Quick Response Fund, which is used for relief and recovery programs. And this is to be used for anticipatory action, Mr. President. Wala pong bagong appropriations na kakailangan dito para
Ino-authorize lang.
maipatupad yung bill.
Ino-authorize
Yes, yes.
lang natin. So,
Tama po.
bakit? So, you mean to say our laws, pagka ginamit mo yan for any anticipatory action, makakasuhan ka pa?
Pwede hong kasuhan na
Bakit?
ng Pangulo.
Hindi ba yung ating 10121 preparedness na nga eh.
Lahat po ng gaan natin post-disaster. Post-disaster, Mr. President.
Kaya yung QRF is post-disaster, right?
Yes. The Quick Response Fund, Mr. President. Kasi ang pagkakalam ko, ang budget ngayon ng OCD is 20. And the RMF is approximately 20 billion pesos. And 30% of it goes to the QRF And 70%, yun ang pwede natin gamitin na pondo para sa post-disaster fund. For example, like building bridges, fixing roads, yun ang mga post-disaster na pwede natin gamitin itong pondong ito. Kasi hindi naman pwedeng...
Hindi ba allowed yun sa preparedness nga?
Hindi.
So can we be educated? What is the current setup? I don't believe that we cannot legally spend to prepare for a forecasted hazard,
Well, according
incoming
to...
hazard or imminent threat.
Well, to illustrate, Mr. President, we have this ASEAN framework on anticipatory action in disaster management, Mr. President. Preparedness for a typhoon might entail developing contingency plans, conducting a drill to test evacuation protocols, verifying that communication channels are functional, and ensuring that the shelters and evacuation centers are well equipped. And anticipatory action is for a typhoon, not for the earthquake. On the other hand, occurs after an early warning is issued, at which point suitable anticipatory actions include undertaking an evacuation of both people and livestock, implementing protective measures for key water sources, securing alternative power supply sources, distributing cash, harvesting and storing crops early and safely, safeguarding livelihood assets such as fishing boats and equipments at storage sites, and pre-positioning response equipment close to locations facing imminent danger, Mr. President. And lastly, anticipatory action, therefore, is not a substitute for investing into preparedness, but is an integral and complementary part of the DRM cycle that only works well if it can build on effective preparedness and mitigation efforts, Mr. President.
But from the enumeration of the so-called anticipatory actions, parang malaki ang kanyang overlap, no, sa preparedness actions. Meron kasi yung evacuation of people from flood-prone areas before the flood, ginagawa na po ngayon yan, even without specific authorization from this bill. Allowed na siya under 10121. The government spends for that.
Well, that is in relation to preparedness, Mr. President. But dito sa anticipatory action, it is very specific dito sa hazard, Mr. President.
Yes. Ang sinasabi ko rin sa tunay na buhay, kunyari, parating na yung malakas na ulan, anticipated na natin na babahain na yung flood-prone area, pwedeng, anong tawag doon? Preemptive evacuation. Allowed. That's allowed under the law, and that's charged to government expense. I don't think that is an unauthorized expense.
Well, that is allowed, Mr. President, but that is not an anticipatory action.
Sige, can we apply nga na flood-prone area, may prediction na napakalakas ang ulan ng darating na bagyo. What is the an example of an anticipatory action?
An example would be sandbagging for the protection of our roads, Mr. President. That is one example that I can produce, Mr. President.
Now that cannot be done. Under RE 10121. Now it cannot be done.
Not yet.
No LGU can say that we will sandbag the highway.
Wala, no?
Pero actually, Mr. President, natakot ako sa example natin kasi baka laki ng gastos, baka hindi rin mag-succeed kasi tandaan nyo, water will find a way, will seek parang gaps. So if that is the example, yung pera, mas maganda na yata. Evacuate na lang natin yung mga tao po at lagay na lang sa evacuation centers.
Well, if I may read another example,
Yes,
just
pa,
given to me by our resource persons. In 2024, Start Network activated Start Ready before severe tropical storm Christine. Members in Cagayan deployed safety boxes in schools, barangay health units that safeguard learning modules, school records, barangay health records, medical equipment from possible flooding, Mr. President. And in certain LGUs, Mr. President, preemptive evacuation is only voluntary and LGUs cannot use their existing funds to provide for the evacuees.
sige po, Mr. President.
If you didn't hear my last
Yes, ano.
my last statement, in certain local government units, preemptive evacuation is only voluntary and the LGUs cannot, I repeat, cannot use their existing funds to provide for the evacuees, Mr. President, because they have to declare state of calamity. At natatakot po itong mga mayors na ito. Pag mag-declare ng state of calamity, natatakot sa COA, baka i-disallow. Kaya yun ang nagiging problema ng halos lahat ng ating mga LGUs. Another example, Mr. President, is that through the shelter strengthening support, we were able to save lives, assets, homes from a variety of typhoons since 2018. By installing roof and wall support, the vulnerable communities' houses were able to withstand the impacts of disasters. Furthermore, some houses and communities have kept the kits installed or have learned to install the kits, learning the value of improving their houses to more safe and resilient shelters, Mr. President.
Fishing vessels.
Another one is the protection of critical livelihood assets, for example, evacuation of fishing boats in safe storage areas before super typhoon Pepito hit Catanduanes province. All 283 boats were all saved, Mr. President.
So congratulations, you did all that under existing law.